Hello, this is Kale, and today we're looking at the latest, or not so latest, depending on how you look at it, arrival from Robot Space Industries, the Perseus. It has been floating around for a short while on the Star Citizen leaks, and from there naturally it has been spreading around. I refrained from making a speculation video on it, seeing it was due soon anyhow, and well, here she is. In short, the Perseus is the blade where the hammerhead is the shield. When we're looking at the corvettes currently available, it brings to the table full size 7 weapons in 2 manned turrets, 20 size 5 torpedoes and full size 3 weapons in 2 remote turrets. Compared to the hammerhead, all systems are equal, except the Perseus is listed with a large quantum fuel tank versus the medium on the hammerhead, which would be a nice addition. The Perseus also comes in a small package as it currently sits, being slightly shorter, quite a bit more narrow, but a little taller than the hammerhead. It also has 10 SU more cargo space, or enough space for a rover. The final point of comparison is going to be the crew count. The Perseus is listed as needing 6 crew total. I assume this will be a pilot, 4 gunners and an engineer. The hammerhead in comparison is listed as requiring 3 with a maximum of 9. However, in use 8 would be needed with 1 pilot, 6 gunners and 1 engineer. This does mean that the Perseus is going to be easier to crew. This covers the stats as we know them, but of course I do not end it there. There's speculation to be had, fangirling over the design to be done, and history to talk about. So let's run those down in reverse order, just to keep you sharp. History-wise, this reinforces to me the heavy Star Wars inspiration Chris always had. The reason I say this is that the original Perseus design dates back to the 2520s, a time when shields were not even a thing. For those of you who are not very good at mathematics, that's about 430 years ago. For comparison, 430 years ago we were sailing around with 40-gun galleons, and these days we have early railguns, hypersonic anti-ship missiles, and ships with nuclear power plants. Even with the best will in the world, none of those systems would fit on a 30-meter wooden galleon. This sort of technology and design remaining relevant for exceedingly long periods is something quite key to Star Wars lore, and hence the comparison is easily made. Of course, in the 2520s, these ships were probably a class or 2 above what the new iteration is listed at. The Perseus' reputation was built on often just needing to be present to deter any desire to oppose the rulers or for hostile aliens to commit acts of aggression. Of course, if shots had to be fired and did live up to the reputation at hand, which is of course a key factor into maintaining said reputation. The badges worn by the crew of the UPES Arash are a good example of the reputation the Perseus had earlier in its career. They read, "Never a shot fired, never a battle lost." Naturally, such claims are questioned, but serve nonetheless as a good example. 340 years the program lasted, with RSI pulling the plug in 2860 as demand was no longer there. The stop in production would last for 86 years, when some of the last stragglers in the now UEE Navy managed to remind an Admiral Ernst Bishop of just how darn useful they could be, as was shown by the crew of the UES Achilles, which managed to take out 2 Thunder destroyers during Operation Mandrake. While the Achilles was damaged beyond repair, it turned the tide in the battle and left a lasting impression with the Admiral. Admiral Ernst Bishop soon after would lobby RSI to relaunch the Perseus program as a result of these events. With the Vandal threat rising and mobilization efforts starting, RSI has seen that there is once again a market for the vessel. It hence has spent the last years redeveloping the aging design, keeping the all fear-inspiring exterior, but reworking the internals to bring her up to 2950 standards. Now, being sold in the civilian market, the Perseus is no doubt to once again be a success for RSI, showing the strength and longevity of their designs, when even 400 years later they can still wake fear in their opponents and back up the very threat their presence utters. It is likely the Perseus will once again become a common sight, but this time in the hands of civilian pilots, local militias or law enforcement units. Rumors are also that the Navy has renewed interest in the reworked Perseus, though any UEE contracts have not yet been publicly announced. Now let's fangirl over the design for a moment. A wedge with a couple of small wings and big engines is about as timeless as you can get for a science fiction ship design that just works, and the Perseus in my opinion does the profile justice. There's no denying of course that anyone sensible would design a bridge in the center of the ship and make all the turrets remote, but this is Star Citizen and lore-wise that's just not done. A lot of weapon systems are often manned from within the system itself and not remotely. So with that in mind, the design fits the lore and setting and looks really cool. The top bridge / cockpit is always going to be a cool factor point, and it would appear to have a good amount of visibility. Of course you will have none looking down, which could be an issue at times. The two main turrets would also appear to have a good bit of visibility, where this is not blocked by the big boy size 7 guns on either side, but that would be unavoidable period. So overall it would seem that COG is learning on that front and is designing the turrets better and better. I also like the design of these turrets, and I wonder if the additional armor plate that we see on the back of them is a callback to the original design of the Perseus when it was built in a time when shields were not a thing. What is interesting is that below the turrets we see what appear to be ammunition belts. This does beg the question if these weapons are a bespoke system or can be swapped out with other size 7 weapon systems. I think with this bit of concept art that we see right now, along with the fact that we see the turrets being like produced or at least worked on, all having those guns installed, I think it's going to be likely that this will be a bespoke size 7 weapon system, which would also fit with the current Crusader Ares, which also uses a bespoke size 7 weapon. I wonder if this is going to be more of a thing going forward, so that at some point with the larger weapon systems, they are just becoming bespoke systems and no longer easily interchangeable. It comes with a beefy tri-leg landing gear, which of course is required for it to land, be it on pads or in hangars, or just on the ground itself. With the size, I think she will be a little bit more easy to fit in said hangars, where the hammerhead is quite often a bit of a tight squeeze, where the turrets need to be powered down for it to even fit. The cargo lift, of course, we mentioned earlier, it's capable of holding 15 SU of cargo in total, or an Ursa-sized rover. This was one of the big structural changes for the new civilian model. RSI claimed, as it states, most civilian pilots want the additional flexibility and capacity. While 50 SU is not an enormous amount of cargo, it is enough that it could make sense to use the Perseus as a low-bulk, high-value cargo runner. On the interior we see a lot of exposed elements and a styling that feels like a proper military vessel. We also get a glimpse of those size 5 torpedoes, which the brochure would make us believe are good anti-fighter weapons, and we can back this up currently in the persistent universe. Finally, the ship has docking colors, though those appear to be a bit clippy, which is probably due to the painted over nature of this white box model, and will be fixed in due time. So that's the design out of the way. Now let's take a look at how we can actually see her being used in game and in the verse. The first thing here I want to stress strongly, and something that people seem to forget, corvettes are not a capital grade vessel. Corvettes are designed to be cheap escorts that can be built in civilian shipyards without needing to have the same level of technology to build full-on warships. This is of course a callback to World War II, which is another key inspiration for Star Citizen and Chris Roberts. While some may make use of capital grade components, talking corvettes here, these are mostly reserved for, full-on combat units as frigates and above. And generally, even if you're doing World War II, you're talking about destroyers. Frigates were not really a thing, but then modern day frigates are destroyer or even cruiser-sized units. So with that cleared up, we can talk about her role in the verse as a gunship. With those 4 size 7 guns, she will be a medium range unit, with about half the DPS of her hammerhead, if we count the optimal position for the hammerhead, where she can bring 5 turrets to bear. Now at first you may consider only half the DPS to be an issue, but you have to consider the range advantage that these guns have. Range is always a crucial advantage in combat, and historically having a longer effective range is something weapon designers are always looking for. Being able to hit your enemy without them having a means to strike back is naturally a win. Now we do not have a lot of actual reliable data on size 7 weapons at this time. However, the little data we have would suggest the mentioned range advantage but lower DPS. Still, with a DPS, the Perseus would be able to drop a shield facing on a hammerhead in anywhere from 8 to 12 seconds. If we say for comparison's sake, we're talking energy weapons. The Perseus of course uses ballistics, but we're trying to get some sense of how much firepower it has. This is a lot of punch. And you have to consider with that range, the hammerhead will not be able to close that range disadvantage that it has. If it just flies straight towards the Perseus, it will not be able to reinforce those front shields enough to stop incoming firepower, so the Perseus will likely be able to take out a hammerhead before it can even get into its effective range. This is why that range advantage is so important, and the loss in DPS you get is not as relevant as people often might think. Now, lore-wise, it was claimed that the UEES Achilles took out 2 Vandal destroyers. This is a claim I would say is one for the storybooks, and probably really down to the fact this was a fleet action. A Vandal destroyer is going to be about 15 times the mass of the Perseus, so that's not really going to be happening. Again though, we are speculating. Until we get ships with size 7 weapons in game and get people to try and spawn Idris and test out the size 7 weapons on those, we just don't know. The dual remote size 3 turrets I think are the main issue for the Perseus. These are a little bit lacking. They're meant to be an anti-ordnance firepower, so they're designed to be shooting down incoming torpedoes. But with only having 2 size 3 weapons on each of them and one being only rear facing, I simply do not think that this is going to be enough firepower to reliably take out torpedoes. I would like to see an upgrade here to probably a quad size 3 layout, giving it that really high volume of firepower that will allow it to, hopefully, with some reliability, destroy larger incoming torpedoes. Against fighters, the Perseus is going to maintain a weakness, and that's fine. Ships do need to have a counter to them, because this requires people to start teaming up and to cover each other's weaknesses. A really good example for the Perseus, of course, is going to be running it together with a Hammerhead. These two ships are really complementary to each other. Another thing I hear people go on about is the fact that it doesn't have a medical facility. Again, I reinforce, this is not a capital grade unit. It doesn't need a medical facility. If somebody gets injured on such a small crew, it's going to be tough luck. Either you can chance that you can transfer them to a ship that has proper medical facilities, or most likely you're in a combat situation, and at that point the combat situation will just be a continuous situation, and if somebody is injured, too bad. We still need to be fighting. We can't get the engineer to do anything else. We can't get people to step out of the turrets. We need to keep the combat going. On a small ship like this, a medical facility is not going to be a requirement. The only reason a ship the size of a Carrack has a medical facility is because it's designed to be an independent unit that's operating far, far away from any support. So overall, if we just compare the Perseus to her peers and near peers, she slots in nicely, and I would expect by the time she's flight ready, she would price match with the Hammerhead, as the Hammerhead being flight ready of course has its higher price tag already. The Polaris of course seems to be better value in comparison, but I do think the Polaris is going to be a higher operational cost in game because of higher crew count, and those size 10 torpedoes are going to be expensive. Currently missiles are really cheap in the first, but I expect this to be changing. If you're currently also in the market for a Hammerhead, then I would suggest that you acquire a Perseus instead, because you will get a Hammerhead loaner, and the Perseus of course being cheaper, you can actually see which ones you want to keep down the line. Of course, if the upgrades are going to change, do keep an eye on that and make sure you are securing the ship that you really want by the time it's required. So overall, I'm quite pleased with the Perseus. It seems to have a good capability with its own weaknesses and strengths. It does something different from what's out there, and in this class of ship that is important. Lore-wise, it doesn't seem like the UE Navy is a force that would operate multiple types of ships of the same class and role. I think the Perseus ship will be useful to almost anybody that expects trouble. So whether you're a PMC style organization or an industrial one, ships like the Perseus and Hammerhead are really powerful deterrents against hostiles that want to ruin your day, or really strike at your hostiles and ruin their day. In the end, ships like the Perseus is ideally suited to take on ships ranging from probably vanguards, maybe slightly larger ships to our own peers. But it's also capable to threaten smaller capital line units like frigates and destroyers. Although against those, you probably want to be wary of the larger guns that they may field in turret mounts or in fixed mounts that can outrange her. In fleet engagements, this will naturally be less of an issue with more targets to go around. A Perseus gunship could get within range more easily, and full size 7 weapons are likely to be quite capable. For comparison's sake, the Idris' largest turret is a dual size 7 currently as well. Of course this could change. That said, I really wouldn't want to be picking fights with a Javelin, and the Javelin of course is going to be in comparison to the Vandal destroyer, which is why I consider that claim a little bit dubious. So that is my overview of the RSI Perseus. As always, I hope it has been informative and useful. I also hope the quality of this video will be a bit better than the previous ones. It's going to be the first fully edited video that will go up. Of course, we're just mainly looking here at screenshots. Video editing, like actual video editing in here will also come, but I need to start somewhere and learn these skills. Feedback will of course be appreciated. It can either be here on YouTube, but using the likes, dislikes and comments. But I also launched a little Discord server. It's of course kind of empty right now, but I'm sure we can fill her up. You can find a link to that in the description, where we can talk Star Citizen, but also science fiction in general, because I just like science fiction a lot. To close off then, I'd like to thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I have been Kade, and I'm signing off.